Okay, we have about 3 or 4 people connecting in so far and a few others. That's great. I'm Rick Roller, and in tonight's topic, we're going to be talking about licensing issues, and it's going to be fun. We've got some questions to go through, and hopefully if you guys write down any questions that you may have, we'll be happy to work with those as well. Welcome, Tiffany. Okay, let's just go ahead and get started.
You want to jump right into the first question?
Right. Yeah. This is Dan Naylor, of course, is on screen now. Dan is the owner and our technical expert and producer of tonight's program. The Institute of Real Estate Education, folks, is a fine school. And I know that many of you have not been to other schools or had an opportunity to compare other schools. But I'm just telling you, man, you're in the right spot. We're very happy with our passing record, and a lot of students have been reporting back in that they felt like they're extremely well prepared. So that's the purpose of these programs, is to go through some questions, kind of show you what you're going to see, and also to answer your questions. This is live. Mary, welcome. Okay, let's look at our first question, Dan, if that's okay.
Yep, let's pull it up.
All right, here, our first question is, Kay is holding an open house on a cul-de-sac. Okay, and they want to put up a sign in the corner of the street to direct people to the open house, which is true. A, they cannot place signs anywhere except on the open house property. Now, that'd be a bummer, and that's not true. You drive around the community, you see signs everywhere. B, they must notify the owner of the house at every location where they plan to put a sign. You must notify the owner of the house, meaning met what your client. C, they must compensate any property owner where a sign is placed. No, not necessarily. D, they must get permission from any property owner where they want to put up a sign. And that is the correct answer, folks. It's just good practice anyway, but it's also a great opportunity for you to talk to another owner in the area. The National Association of Realtors has determined over many studies, over years, actually over decades, that when a sign pops up in a neighborhood, another sign is going to pop up for sale as well, and that within about 50 homes. So if you're already working that neighborhood, you already got one listing there, you might as well have two, right? So work that neighborhood, send them postcards, knock on the doors, put flyers, whatever you want to do. One for one has always been a great program. Every listing ought to get you another listing. But on this one, they cannot place signs anywhere. No, they can put signs anywhere. You can get permission to put them up. They must notify the owner of the house, meaning the owner of the house you're holding open, every location where they plan to put a sign. Your owners don't care, as long as their neighbors don't come back and complain. They must compensate any property owner. No, that's not true. Most property owners don't want to be compensated or care about being compensated. All they want is that your sign clearly indicates it's not their house for sale. The arrow is pointing this way down the street. That's what they want to know. So, but you must get permission. Doesn't have to be in writing, but they must get permission from any property owner where they want to put up a sign. Now, a for sale sign on a property that is the property for sale, you must have written permission from that owner to put a sign up there. But written permission is not necessary for temporary open house signs. Next question, please. Okay, the next question. A double contract is used to represent two clients? No. Hides information from a lender? Hang on to that one. Is common practice? Only for people that want to go to jail. And protects the lender. No, it deceives the lender. What a double contract is there's two contracts. Correct answer to this, of course, is B. It hides information from the lender. The purpose of a double contract, as far as the real estate commission think, is to cheat a lender into lending more money on a house than they ordinarily would do. So let's say a house is let's say it's $300,000. You want to get 100% loan, so you make one contract for 300, that you hide that one, and then you have another contract for 330 or 360, and you say, well, we're putting $30,000 or $60,000 down. And then you try to devise some scheme to show the lender that you actually had a down payment that you've already paid the seller. It's loan fraud, folks. And if you do things like this, it's going to be, you will be discovered and you will lose your license, and it will be very embarrassing. Okay. And there actually could be some.
I forgot to see you cut it.
Okay. There.
Next time I get another pineapple.
Okay. What? So we got a little girl speaking in the background. If you could mute your side of that, that would be great. Okay. Okay. So that's a double contract. You don't want to do that. So the next question is, please. Okay, the commission rate on a real estate transaction. Now, guys, are there rules at the division that you have to charge certain amounts of money? No, of course not. You know, commissions are always negotiable. B, are determined by company policy and cannot be changed. Not really. Cannot be changed by clients. How about D, can always be negotiated? Now, of these four answers, what you'll see is there's usually two that you can eliminate right away. Maybe you're not all that familiar with the commission rules, so hang on to A, but determined by company policy and cannot be changed. Of course, they can be negotiated. You know, you have to get approval from your broker, but usually they give you some leeway. Cannot be changed by clients. Can always be negotiated. So of the two, A and B, usually you can eliminate two, A and B. D is the correct answer. You can always negotiate. Commissions are always negotiable. And when you talk about commissions are negotiable, it's not just the seller side, it's the buyer side as well. Well, what do you do when you're negotiating the buyer side? Well, you do a rebate, commission rebate. So if there was a $10,000 commission on the buyer side of a transaction, and you agreed up front that if they bought a house from you, they would get a $2,000 rebate. That's just called a rebate. Now, you say, well, wait a minute, we can't share commissions with people that are not licensed. Well, neither your seller's not licensed and your buyer's not licensed. But on the other hand, there are parties to the contract. One's the seller and one's the buyer. So you're not really negotiating, you are negotiating your commission, but it's not like you're paying them a commission. They're just negotiating how much it is. Okay, so any questions about that? Cool. Let's look at the next question, please.
You know, Rick, one thing I tell agents sometimes about this is they say, can I offer a benefit to a buyer to use me as a client, as their agent, or can I offer something to a seller to use me as their client? You know, sometimes they give a free iPad, or they give a free vacation, or a rebate like you talked about. And I always tell them, you can give someone a rebate up to your commission amount or more.
Yeah, if you want to go in the hole. Maybe you just want to break into that community. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
Yo, lo que te digo, pues.
Totally allowed to give your.
Con Gabriel Alejandro, a ver qué me dice, y con base en eso vamos a avanzar.
Totally allowed to give your client a rebate, like Rick was talking about.
Sure. Yeah, I had a rash of calls and from a number of agents one time when there was an agent up in their area, and what his marketing theme was, he put out a big mailer, and he got some of his competitors on the board pretty angry with him. And what he was offering was a Las Vegas vacation if you listed your home with them. And they said, well, you can't do that because you're sharing your commission. No, you're negotiating your commission. You know, so if they're a party to the transaction, if they're a buyer or seller, they, you know, I mean, the gloves are off as far as the money goes. What you cannot do is if their neighbor called you and said, hey, you're selling a home in our area, you came by, we liked you, you knocked on the door, you seem like a nice person. My neighbor across the street just told me they're going to put their house up for sale. Would you give me a couple of grand for telling you about this great lead? You can't do that. Okay. Next question, please. Okay. Yeah. All right. This just, what a great segue. A client wants to give a tip to their agent, You know, you did such a great job for us. Here, we want you to have this. And there's an envelope, and in there is $500 in cash, which is true. A, the agent need not notify their broker. B, the agent must give the money to their broker. C, the agent must give half the money to their broker. The agent must, and then D, the agent must apply the money towards their broker's license. Okay. Well, what you spend your commissions on is totally different. And bonuses, the same thing, but D doesn't work. C doesn't work. I mean, you may be on a 80-20 split. Why would you have to give them half? And the correct answer here, of course, is B. The agent must give the money to their broker. Now, some brokers, you'll walk in and you'll say, hey, I got a bonus on the Smithers house. They wanted to give me this $500. Look, it's in this envelope here. And a broker might say, well, hey, good. Let me see that. Yeah, it feels like a commission. It smells like a commission. Probably would spend like a commission. Why, we have a commission split. I keep 20 of this. I'll give you 80 of it or whatever it is. But that's, yeah, it's a commission. They may give it all to you. I don't know, but it is a commission. Best bonus I ever got one time, I did a deal. I'd done several deals with this gentleman, but I did a deal and he gave me a Mercedes-Benz. How about that?
Nice.
But I was my own broker. I didn't have to, go to my broker and say, you get the car on Monday through Wednesday and I get the car, I mean, we didn't have to do that.
80-20 split on the car.
Yeah, an 80-20 split on the car. But he made a couple $1 million on things I got him into. See, he was a happy camper. Oh, by the way, it was his personal car. It wasn't a new one. But I told him how much I liked his little two-door, and he just gave it to me. How about that?
Hey, Rick,
I hope that happens to you. You all deserve that. Okay, there's nothing special about me. All right, next question, please.
Hey, Rick.
Dan.
On a similar note with the car, I thought I heard someone tell a story about someone using a car as earnest money on a transaction. Can you do that?
Yeah, I had a deal where a guy did an old antique car as earnest money. He gave me the title to it, and I said, well, I don't want to take possession of the car, but we let it. But we have the title. They agreed that we could just hold the title, but yeah, it's weird science earnest money, and you may not want to do it, but I know your broker doesn't want to do really weird stuff like gold bullion. I mean, how do you know it's not counterfeit or foreign currencies? Probably. I mean, anything that has to be verified, you probably want to stay away from that. But talk to your broker. I mean,
Doesn't it have to go into a trust account in order for it to be like
so it's kind of hard to put a title of an automobile in a trust account. But,
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like you have to get the value in a credit and then do it like that, or
well, what we would do is, we came up with the value. It was around $30,000 back in those days, and then we just modified the contract to say that the car would be physically in this place, but the title would be held in the file of the broker's office. But just avoid weird science earnest money anyway, if you can,
As long as the contract says where it's going to be and they both agree, then that's okay, right? But if it's cash, then yes, it has to go into the earnest account.
Well, lately one of the things that buyer's agents are doing is they're saying upon accepting, if you accept our offer, we'll make $2,500 of this earnest money hard immediately, and it'll be transferred directly to the buyer. I mean, within 5 days after the offer is accepted or something. I don't know. So they're doing all kinds of things to make their offer more enticing than the average bear. And so it's kind of interesting, but it needs to be spelled out so everyone understands what's going on. Okay, a broker receives a referral from a friend who's not licensed every month. So this is an ongoing thing. He's always careful to only give a gift of $100 each time, which is true. S is breaking a rule. S is the broker. They're breaking a rule. Yes, they're breaking a rule. S is not following the rules. Oh no, S is following the rules. I'm sorry, that's not true. S is not following the rules because continual referrals for monies are considered solicitation. The problem here is that his friend is not licensed, and it spelled that out. And see, so when you're reading this question, I suggest you read your questions twice before you glance down at the offers. But if you read this question, referrals from a friend who's not licensed, why would they put the not licensed in there unless it was really important? He's always careful to only give a gift of $100. You can give a gift up to, it's $250 now, isn't it, Dan? It just got bumped up not too long ago.
Yeah, 250 as of about a year ago.
Yeah.
A little longer than that.
S is following the rules. No, S is not following the rules. That's the correct answer. S is not following the rules because he cannot give gifts over $50. No, that's not the point here. The point here is this is a reoccurring thing, and he does it every single month. Well, then what he has is a solicitation agreement with this person. Hey, every time you give me a lead, I'm going to give you $100. That is something you could do to someone that was licensed. You'd have to pay their broker, but you can't do that with people that are not licensed. You just can't develop these sorts of relationships. Some people, there's always some people in one person in a neighborhood for sure that knows everything about everybody. And it'd be great to have that friend, that person as a friend, so they're telling you what's going on all the time. But it's not. You can't give them money unless they have a license. Then you have to pay them through their broker. And the last answer on there, it's not following rules because a broker cannot ever compensate a non-licensed person. That's not true. You can give them a gift up to $250. It just can't be it can't be a solicited. Every time you do this is what you're going to get. Okay, we just did this one, Dan. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Client signs a listing agreement, which is true. The client represents the agent who represents the broker. Client represents the agent. Does that sound right to you guys? No. The agent represents their broker who represents the client. Okay. Hang on to that one. That's warm and fuzzy. The broker represents the agent who represents the client. Your broker represents you? No. The agent represents the client who represents the broker? No. No, guys. The only one that makes sense here, obviously, is B. The agent represents their broker who represents the client. It goes principal, which is in this case, that's the client. The agent is the broker and the sub-agent is you. So it goes principal, agent, sub-agent when you're talking about agency. When you're talking about licensing, there's a broker's license and an agent license. But sometimes words are used in different areas of the test at the same, on the same test. So if you're talking about agency, the agent, that's the broker, represents their broker who represents their client. No, this is licensing. Agent represents their broker who represents their client. Okay, but the broker, if you're breaking it down into principal, agent, sub-agent, the broker is the agent and the agent is the sub-agent. Was that clear as mud? Okay. Anyway, the broker, yeah. Anyway, that's the correct answer here, guys. So just understand the term agent, if it's used with agency, is different than if it's used for licensing. And let's look at the next question. Regardless of where the closing takes place, who is responsible to ensure the settlement statement is accurate and reflects the terms agreed to in a real estate purchase contract? This is always the broker's responsibility. Yeah. And it's the principal broker's responsibility. Now, I'm an associate broker. I work for a broker. I could have my own brokerage, but I choose not to because of several advantages of where I'm currently working. So I'm an associate broker, right? And, I might close in a number of different title companies, but wherever we close, the principal broker is responsible for the accuracy of the settlement statements. It's not the office manager, and it's certainly not the real estate commission. Commission, come on, they're just our regulators. They're not responsible for what happens in the field. They're responsible for making rules and regulations and making sure that agents that disobey those rules and regulations are duly reprimanded. Okay. It's not the office manager. Most office managers aren't even licensed. And it's not the associate broker, guys. It's the principal brokers responsible for the accuracy of all the settlement statements. The heck of it is that most principal brokers, however, don't really review those documents until after the closing. So sometimes they have to run around and unravel things or fix things. You need to be really good at closing. So you need to understand those settlement sheets so that you know, as an agent, even though your broker is responsible, it just impresses your clients a lot better if you know what those figures mean. There's a couple different ways to get there. Is to get there early, perhaps, and then go through the figure with the title company. Sometimes that works. A lot of times it doesn't, because they're working on the figures up to the last minute. They don't have a time, you know, they don't have a chance to sit down with you before you actually do the closing. But after the closing, stick around and say, could you go through that with me? I had a question about this, this, and this. May not be something you want to bring up in front of your client. Anyway, you need to really understand those. I have a CE class that we have at the school, you know, called the Agent Guide to Settlement, and I'd suggest you take that. It's a 2-hour class. You're going to get 2 hours of CE credit for it, and you'll understand a lot about closings a lot more. But I found, you know, thousands of closings I've been in over 44 years. Okay, either on that are my own or were my agents, because I always like to go to my agents' closings for the first 1 or 2, so they kind of get the feel of it. But I find mistakes all the time, you know, and a lot of times it's just the title company didn't have all the information. They didn't know it was a rental. They didn't know that the rents had to be prorated. Nobody told them. Or other problems. One time I went in and there was a sweet little old lady that owned this house, and she was paying her taxes in advance. You know, she'd pay them quarterly. So when the end of the year came, she only had like 25% of the property tax to pay instead of the whole thing, because she didn't want to dip into her money that she was using for all her Christmas presents for all her grandkids. So she was paying it in advance. Well, the title company didn't catch that, but I knew it. So when it was one of my agent's closings, I went in there and we fixed it. So it would behoove the broker to be more involved with that, but a lot of times they're going to have to depend on you to catch some of these things, and you're not going to know unless you educate yourself. Strongly recommend you do that, and strongly recommend you go to your closing. We don't have to go to closings anymore. Used to be a requirement that the broker or their authorized agent attended all closings. But with all electronic closings that are happening and people are coming in or moving out of state or whatever, you know, it's just impractical in many cases. There may not be a physical closing. Also in Utah, we do have the situation where the buyer can close at one title company and the seller closes at a different title company. We call that a split closing. We're one of the few states in the nation that even allows that. But it just may not be difficult. Or too difficult to get to those closings. But I strongly recommend you go if you can. It's your chance to kind of put everything together. I usually put together a little book, you know, comb bound or you know, a book with all of the contracts that they signed, so they have them all in one place, you know, and that might be a good thing for you guys to think about doing something like that. Okay, Dan, I just lost you. What the heck? Okay, I got you back. Thanks. So it's my computer, not yours. Okay, so which of the following office tasks must an assistant have a license to perform? It's real popular to get assistants to help you in your business as you're building a business and building a team. And they can do a lot of different things for you, and they can do a lot of things that they don't need a license to do. But some things they do need a license in order to do. So let's kind of dive into this question. An unlicensed assistant can definitely deliver lock boxes. You know, they take them out to a house, they can put them on the house and whatnot. They can certainly type up documents of one kind or another, or help you put together studies or CMAs and that type of thing. And they can certainly copy and distribute flyers. You know, I mean, those are all activities that do not require a license. However, they cannot solicit business without a license. And calling past clients and asking them for referrals is soliciting business. And so D is the correct answer here. They could go with you on door knocking. They, just so you have someone there, because you have a license. They could attend open houses with you to kind of keep their eye on things when people are coming through. And that type of thing, that's totally fine because you have a license and you're there. But as far as doing any work that solicits business one way or another, they cannot do that. Okay, next question, please. A personal assistant to a broker decides to get their real estate license. Okay, once they're licensed, they will only be able to accept payment for real estate activities once a month directly from their broker as hourly wages or after hours. The correct answer is, if you have a license, the only person on the face of this earth that can pay you a commission is your principal broker that your license is hung with. Okay, that's why when you got that envelope with the $500, you had to take it back to the broker and say, look, I got this. Well, if the broker looks at that and says, hey, we're fine here at the company, I want you to have this, that's the broker giving it to you. You can only be paid by your broker. And more often than not, they will just run that money through with the rest of the commission and take their share and give you your share. Okay. If you're not happy with that, there's plenty of places where you can go where you can get higher splits, even as a sales agent, or we would suggest you get your broker's license. Okay. The next question is, R is buying a home as is. Okay. The seller's agent L walks through the home for the final inspection, and L notices there was mold in the wall of the storage room, but they also notice that R didn't see it. Which is true? Well, okay, they're buying the home as is, but anything any defect that could greatly influence the dollar value of a home that you find out about is a material fact, and you have to reveal all material facts. So A, R is responsible for finding all issues, regardless if the agent knows about them. Nah, that's not true. Okay, you can go ahead and put the right answer on if you want, Dan, that's fine. R should get their own agent if they want someone to notify them of mold issues. Okay, I want a mold agent for me too, okay? Now, L noticed the mold. And even though R didn't see it, L has a responsibility, because that could easily be construed as a material fact. So C is correct, and L cannot disclose the mold because of their duty to the seller. Now, your duty to the seller doesn't allow you to hide material facts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just don't. We never lie or cheat anybody, guys. Now, material facts could vary. I mean, it has to have significant input. I mean, a $5 million house and there's a $200 or $300 problem is probably not going to be considered a material fact, but a $200 problem on a $100,000 house might be.
Is this one of those examples where we can say it can be encapsulated, the mold, and then call it good by painting over it?
How you mitigate the mold is a whole different thing.
Okay.
That's not what we're addressing in this question. The only thing we're addressing in this question is, does it have to be disclosed? Mold is one of those things that you can't encapsulate. Mold has to be cut out, or it has to be scraped out, or it has to be removed, and then it has to be sanitized and killed, and then it can be covered. But the only thing you can encapsulate is some asbestos issues and lead-based paint. Okay,
that's good to know.
So the
great question.
disposition of the mold, that's really just up to the buyer and seller, right? Whether they ask them to clean it up or whether they decide to move in with it there and clean it up themselves.
Yeah, I mean, all of, you can buy a house as is, but the thing here is that there was some fact that was discovered that should be disclosed. Now, it'd be great if they discovered it themselves, but if they didn't, you're an agent representing the seller. Well, it would be to my seller's disadvantage if I disclose that, even though I know about it. No, you can't hide things like that. You got to let people know. Okay. Excuse me. All right, next question, please. Look, you have to be fair and honest to everybody. Yeah, I know you have a fiduciary responsibility to the seller, and you honor that. But that doesn't mean you're going to cheat and rob someone. You need to let them know. Which contract can a real estate agent use? Oh, wait a second. Did I miss one? Why is a limited agent representing both the buyer and the seller? Okay, now you have a fiduciary to both on this particular transaction. But if you're a limited agent, which fiduciary duties will they not be able to perform for their clients? Well, care in good faith? No, you're still held to that. Full disclosure and full loyalty. Obviously, this is the correct answer. Okay, this is one they cannot do. I mean, when I'm talking about disclosure, I'm not talking about disclosing, not disclosing a material fact. I'm talking about like, look, let's offer them 500 grand, but I'll go 550 if I have to. So if the buyer told you that and you're representing the buyer, that's great. But if you're representing the seller also, you have to keep the buyer's secret and you have to keep the seller's secret. So there's some issues, and primarily, the purchase price, how low the seller will go or how high the buyer will go, obviously is something that if you're representing both people, you can't give full disclosure. You have to keep, each one has their right to have their secret kept. Prudence and diligence, of course, you're going to be diligent and use good judgment. Honest and integrity, you're never away from doing that. So the only fiduciary duties, there's two. There's full disclosure and loyalty. Okay. And it's right now, there's nothing wrong with limited agency whatsoever. You can definitely do it. Moving forward a few years, I don't know. There's always been a push to limit abilities to do that. But sometimes, there's going to be situations where you have a buyer and inventory is so short right now. So you're actually canvassing a neighborhood that they want to move into, and you find a person who wants to sell their house. And what are you not going to represent the seller and the buyer at the same time? Huh? There's no reason why you can't do that unless there's a conflict of interest, like, for example, you're the buyer, or your mother is the buyer, someone you have a closer relationship to that, no judge is going to feel like that, the seller got adequate representation when the buyer was, close relative of yours. Or a repeat buyer, that gentleman that gave me the Mercedes, we did half a dozen deals together, every 8 months or to a year. He was, and I've had other clients, like contractor clients that, they do 30, 40, 60 homes with me in a year. In those cases, I would never represent a buyer, if they were the sellers, because I just have a long-term relationship with them. So how do you get around that? Well, I mean, you can get a commission out of the deal and not represent the other side. I mean, I recently wrote up an offer on a deal where the owners of the property were relatives of mine, and so I couldn't represent the buyer, but I had the buyer sign what's called an unrepresented buyer's agreement, where I was getting the whole commission, but they agreed that they were smart and knowledgeable and felt like they didn't really need an agent anyway. So I do a really good agency class in the 3-hour class, and also the 12-hour new agent class, the 3-hour residential mandatory class. If you want to really learn the practical ins and outs of agency, which is far more than you need to know than just for the exam. To know for the exam, guys, it's pretty clear cut. when you get out there in the field where things get hairball a little bit different, because, whoa, I want to buy this house, that kind of thing. There's practical things that must be done to keep you in compliance. So I suggest, coming to a class where you learn how to do that. Okay, next question, please. We're doing pretty good on time, Dan. So.
Yep.
Okay, what contact can a real estate agent use for their client to purchase, or what contract can a real estate agent use for their client to purchase a home? Well, only the state-approved real estate purchase contract. No, that's not true. If you read the contract, it even says on there that the Utah law, in the fine print, not necessarily in the different paragraphs or sections, but in the fine print on the beginning and the end, it talks about the fact that Utah law requires real estate agents to use this contract unless their buyer or seller insists they use a different contract. And probably the best example of that is a contractor, a builder who's building his own houses. They'll have their own contract. They're not going to use the real estate contract for new construction that we have through the state. So, and they can do that. So look at B. The correct answer is B, any contract drafted by an attorney or their client. If they insist on using that, they can use that. C, only contracts drafted by their broker. No. First of all, brokers don't draft contracts, attorneys do. We fill in the blanks on pre-approved forms. Only contracts drafted by the AG. The AG is not going to help you on your real estate transactions. Come on, get real. I mean, there's state regulators. They don't have time to sit down and help you write contracts. Okay, so any contract drafted by an attorney or their client, we can use. It's unusual, but probably not so much. Of course, it's used every day in new construction. Okay, but there could be other instances as well. Okay. Is that our last question, Dan?
That's the last question we have today. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's open it up for questions that you guys have on different topics. Alberto, Tiffany, Mary, Indelia.
I had one. It was just I had emailed you guys, but it's the idea of like when doing comparisons, and then there's like the subject property, and then there's like the other ones, and then like I guess in the email that I got back, it was mentioning that that the subject is the one that we don't know, and the other properties are the ones that we do know. And I was just thinking it opposite, but I still kind of don't.
Well, as far as no, we know we know what they sold and closed at. See, the subject property is what we're trying to figure out. What is it worth? We have an offer, and the bank wants to know, about it. Is that offer realistic? We don't want to lend more on it than we have, than we should. So what we're looking at here is that the subject property is the property that's being appraised. Okay, and they're going to go out and find comparables, and the comparables will have closed. So we know what they sold for. So when we say we know those, we know the prices that they sold for. And then we make adjustments to the comparable to make it look more like the subject property. For example, if the comparable sold for a certain price, let's say $500,000, and it had a 3-car garage, but the subject property has a 2-car garage, then the subject property is inferior to the comparable. The comparable is better. I mean, we think of, people would probably pay more for a 3-car garage than a 2-car garage. So the adjuster will make an adjustment on that $500,000 that comparable sold for. He'll pull that back on what he thinks that third garage contributed to the price. So he might drop it 15 grand. I don't know, whatever he thinks it's worth. So that's how you, did that kind of get to the heart of what you're questioning?
Yeah, that is the idea. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, see, right now, appraisals are tough. Well, because prices are rapidly increasing, and so like the couple of deals I just did in the last 45 days or so that I closed, I reported those to the board immediately. So, the day of the settlement, the day of when it was recorded and it was the buyer's home, I was putting that on the MLS because the market is moving so quickly to the upside that an appraiser has a tough job trying to justify today's prices based on properties that sold 6 months ago,
Okay.
or even 3 months ago. And so what an appraiser, quite frankly, should do is they should get on the phone and call every property that appraiser feels is comparable to the subject that is under contract. He needs to call every one of them and ask the agent, is this closed? Is this closed? Oh, great. What did it close for? And can you send me something to substantiate that? Or at least put it on the MLS so I can use it as a comp. But they don't like to do that because it takes a lot of work. So it's up to us, the agent, to keep that as current as we can. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So like in this case, when you mentioned that the subject house is inferior to the comparable, where the comparable was $1 million home and then the other one was not, right?
No, I said it had 3-car garage.
You had garage, yeah.
Two-car garage.
So would there be an adjustment to the subject? No. In addition to the subject, right? Because
we never adjust the subject. It is what it is. We only adjust the comparables. So that comparable is sold for 500 grand. We knocked the price down 15 grand. So it was $485,000. So if all things are equal, to make that comparable more like the subject. Now, what if the comparable only had 2 fireplaces and the subject property had 4 fireplaces? It's a really tricked out, nice house. Well, then we would have to add what we thought, because in this case, the comparable is better than, the subject is better than the comparable.
Mm-hmm. But
we know what the comparable sold for. Okay, it sold for 450 grand. But in this case, we may have to add what, as an appraiser, I felt 2 more fireplaces were worth. And I said, well, this one was just a 0 clearance and it had masonry and that only went up halfway, but this one was a full brick fireplace. And so I figured, well, these 2 fireplaces are worth 5 grand. So I'm going to add $5,000 to the comparable to make it look more like the subject. Is that
okay? Okay. I get it.
We always adjust the comparables to look more like the subject.
Okay.
That is a wonderful concept you need to know for the test. We never adjust the subject. We only adjust the comparables up or down to make them, more like the subject property.
To even them out. Yeah, that makes more sense now. Okay, well, thank you.
Well, probably the easiest way to look at it is a finished basement. The subject property does not have a finished basement, but the house that's very similar to it does have a finished basement. So we got to figure, well, wait a minute, the subject property is not worth as much as one that has a full basement. Well, I got to lower that price down a little bit on the comparable. So some comparables I'll adjust up, other comparables I'll adjust down.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about appraisal work is so many people think it's scientific, like they're going to come out and weigh the house and it's so many dollars per gram or something. This is scientific. It's only worth this much money, and that's BS. Appraisals are artistic. And sometimes, sometimes the appraiser paints with watercolors and sometimes he paints with acrylics. And sometimes we consider that appraisals are autistic. So we don't even know where they're coming from, but they're not scientific, guys. They're artistic. But the better comparables they have, the more accurate they're going to be, right? There's some houses that are oddball houses. There was one house I was looking at. Well, I was looking at Mr. Huntsman's house a couple of weeks ago. It was invited over by the listing agent, and we walked through the house. It was, how big was it? It was over 10,000 square feet. Okay, it was it was over $10 million too. But it was. Are there a lot of comparables in the Utah market that are, $10 million homes? Go like this. Now, we don't have a lot of $10 million homes. Okay.
No.
So an appraiser would normally love to find another comparable that would, that would justify the price of that mansion. Okay. But it may be impossible. So in that case, he'll try to find a few comps, but if he can't find comps, he's going to rely more, on the cost approach. What would it cost to rebuild a property like that? To rebuild a property like probably costs 20 grand nowadays. I mean, plywood is $68 a sheet instead of 30, like it used to be. So, so if you look at it from that standpoint, you're going to get a great deal, but you better have the staff.
Rick,
I have a question for you about the MLS.
Yes.
You had said that they don't have to automatically update the closing price.
No,
It's optional.
it's not optional. I mean, that's part of your responsibility as a listing agent, is to report to the board when it closed and what it closed for. The board doesn't know when these things close. I mean,
Right, but you were saying that you have to call each agent to check and see if it closed.
Well, they actually fine you if eventually you figure out, oh my gosh, I should have put that in on the sold. I should have changed the status from under contract to sold. And if you're too far out, they might come back and slap you on the knuckles, give you a little fine.
Okay,
I think
but
Rick's point was
technically
that
they're supposed to go in and update it. You were saying that a lot of times you have to call the agents because it takes a lot of work to input it.
No, I said that an appraiser, it would behoove an appraiser to, if they're having a hard time finding comparables to justify the price because of the rapid increase in pricing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the comps that have closed in the most shortest recent history would be a better indicator of price than something that closed 6 months ago.
Yeah, of course.
Wouldn't you agree? Okay, but
yes,
if
I was just confused.
But if listing agents are lazy or lax in reporting those properties from under contract to sold, it would help to call. I've had calls from agents that say, "Hey, Rick, you've got this deal under contract. It's not closed yet. I'm trying to find another comp for my appraiser." and
Is there a certain amount of time that they're not doing it by that they're fined? Because shouldn't it be automatic that it updates?
It's not automatic, my dear, because there's no way for the MLS or the board to know when it closed or what it closed for.
Right,
You have it's under
like today I had a
contract.
closing in a different state and I put it in the sales price, I put in the closing date. And so then I got an email today from my MLS saying, here's your 1 day notification, because it was technically supposed to close tomorrow. But I just had to go in there and just hit close. The price, everything was already in there, but
Well,
it doesn't sound like it's not automated. It's something that has to be manually done. Some agents don't.
It can't be automated because occasionally there's some last minute negotiations.
Sure.
The buyer has the right to do a walkthrough no sooner than 7 days before that property actually closes. What if when the seller moved out, they damaged the house in one way or another? The piano slid off the dolly and put a hole in the wall. And so the buyer goes through on their final walkthrough and says, "Wait a minute, there's 2 holes in the wall, and you rip the vinyl in the laundry room, getting the washing machine out. So I want that stuff, fixed, or I'm not going to close." Well, we can go ahead and close, and we'll give you $4,000, or whatever. So we'll reduce the price by that. And so there's things that could happen in the last few things. I mean, when you put something under contract, you're hoping this is what's going to happen, and this is the time it should happen by.
Yeah, sure.
But we don't know for sure, and the board doesn't know, and the MLS can't, and it's your responsibility. So the only thing they can do to keep those comps as current as they can on the MLS is to slap the knuckles on those agents that are too lazy to do their work. And it's I think you're good for 5 to 10, 15 days. You usually
15
what is it in your
days?
board, Dan?
What? That's insane.
What is it up there in your board? Do you know?
I'll have to double check, but I think it's about 10 days max.
Yeah, I think it's about
Wow.
and I don't know. The fines are, they may say, well, it's $200, but they may reduce it or they may not. But the point is a lot of agents, because they're just really busy, they employ contract administrators, that handle a lot of that stuff for them, and and they may pay them a couple $100 or $250 or whatever it is to make sure everything's done and done right. I just got a email on a closing I had a while back, and the administrator was going through the contracts. Says, "Oh, we need a copy of the electrician's bill for this particular item." I says, "Well, I'll get her one, but it's pretty old, but I'm happy to do that." So I'm out of town today, but when I get back in town, I'll get it done, or I'll take care of it tomorrow by phone. But there's always things that go on, but it's great questions, guys. Who else has another question? Okay, well, then we're going to wrap it up tonight. We really appreciate you being here. Remember, my phone number is 801-556-8000. So if you think of something that you didn't get answered tonight, or you have another topic, or you're studying something and you want to know, pick up the phone and call me. I'm happy. 556-8000 to take those calls. And we'll spend a quality couple of minutes on the phone, sometimes longer. Always happy to. And if you have questions about, what's it take to make it in a market like this, happy to share my concepts for what they're worth. Guys, we really appreciate you being at our school. We are committed and dedicated to not only getting through the exam, but getting a good solid foundation so that you can have a wonderful career. Thanks for being with us tonight. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Right. Bye.
Thank you.